Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real honour to be here again. It always is an honour to address a user group. It's a very different kind of event from an Oracle event. Very honoured to be here. It's a great privilege, and we're always humbled speaking to user groups, particularly OBUG. Actually, I've been in Oracle now for 20 years, and OBUG has a long history of being a very outspoken, very transparent, very candid, and very innovative and dynamic user group, and long may that continue. It may surprise you perhaps to know that within Oracle we really value that. Your voice matters a lot. Over the years there's been many occasions, things like support for Red Hat Linux and others, where the voice of the user group has absolutely impacted hard upon decisions that we're taking as a commercial organisation with responsibility towards customers, shareholders, employees and so on. Your voice really matters, and so I strongly encourage you and thank very, very much the OBUG board for the work that they put in to maintaining that level of dynamism and that level of candour. It may be news to you, I don't know, but certainly within EMEA, I suspect globally, but certainly within EMEA, I am going to keep walking, by the way. I've got one of these step things, okay? So I'm hoping to get rid of a third of the day's steps just over the coming while. So it's going to keep this man busy as well with the camera. It may surprise you to know that in actual fact, per head of population, there is more Oracle software at work today in Benelux than any other country cluster. Certainly in Europe, Middle East and Africa and Asia Pacific, I think within North America as well. Very, very good, solid user of Oracle technologies for a long period, long history of the use of the database, the use of developers. Some of the most innovative work in early days, construction of applications, forms, etc., was done within the Benelux region. It's actually maybe news to you, but certainly within Oracle is well respected as an innovative, high density, high intensity use of Oracle technologies. So we really appreciate that. Do use OBUG to make your voice be heard. We're all professionals here, and professionals associated with IT. That's why we're here. We have something to do with it in the way that we make our living. And being a professional has its ups and downs. Being a professional will have involved some sort of investment, time like you're spending today, time and effort, maybe at a university or a college, some other degrees, qualifications, certifications, examinations in order to achieve your professional level, experience, time, effort, and of course there's reward as well, not least of all the very definition of being a professional. You get paid, you make money out of that skill. And there's other benefits as well. There's personal satisfaction, achieving your goals and so on as a professional. Perhaps one of the things all of us as professionals in our professional lives, one of the downs, one of the things that we have to suffer and bear is the inevitable amateur who thinks they know more than we know as professionals about our subject. But that's the same in any profession, isn't it? And it's just an agony that you have to suffer. I see my friends in marketing within Oracle, poor souls. They will sit there at the table, they've done degrees, they've done studies, they've done certificates, they've got years of experience, they know what works and what doesn't work, they know what advertising campaign function, they know all the background, but they sit at the table with their ideas, and suddenly all of us in the room, whether we started life as a C programmer or as an accountant, all of us are marketeers, aren't we? We've all got a great idea about what that advert should look like. Oh, you should say this. Oh, the colours should be different over there. Why don't you put it in this magazine? We're all experts, all of a sudden. My daughter's just become a psychologist, studied long and hard to learn all about psychology, the background theory, how you can be led down the wrong route accidentally, how people can mislead you when you're trying to make a diagnosis within psychology. A huge amount of experience, and yet, when she comes home, I will quite happily sit there, all of us will, in the armchair, and we're all psychologists, aren't we? Oh, I told you, that marriage was never going to last. No, totally different personalities. Oh, the reason he's unhappy is he had a very unhappy childhood. We're all expert psychologists. How agonising. How excruciating for the professional. But what about us in IT? How excruciating is that? Before the event of consumer IT, we were the experts in the room. We were the people who knew the difference between a byte and a bit. We were the people who could understand issues of security and transaction handling and atomic transaction, etc. But now, how agonising is it? My 87-year-old mum, at home in Drumnadrochit, is talking to me about whether a Wi-Fi network should be N or G, and how many megabits are coming down the line from Inverness to Drumnadrochit. Mum doesn't know what a bit is. How maddening and excruciating. As a professional, I have to suffer these amateurs around me. Everybody with a bloody iPhone, everybody with a phone, is suddenly an IT guru who's ready to tell us all that we need to do. And yet, the good marketeer, the confident and the mature marketeer won't dismiss all of the ideas around the table when we all start trying to say what should be done differently in the advert or the music or the words. They'll use their professional experience to be able to separate what might work and might not work, what might be difficult to implement, might be easier to implement, but they will also listen. The good, mature ones will listen to potentially new input. Maybe these amateurs have their use, after all, in coming in with different ideas. The good psychologist most certainly will listen. They won't just dismiss the comments of all the amateurs around them, rigidly adhering to their learnings and their opinions. The good, mature and experienced psychologist will actually listen to what else is being said and done, as will the good doctor, even to the amateur opinions, because there may be some information there that as a professional they can use, they can interpret, and they can deploy effectively. In exactly the same way, all of us, as IT professionals, we can't really dismiss the consumers and the users of IT. Let's face it, it's now everybody. No longer is it just a small number of people in finance or in accounts that use our systems. Everybody is. But we can't just dismiss them all and say, we know how it's done. You don't understand, we've got to handle security governance. We too need to be mature, confident, and open-minded enough to listen to opinions of others around us. We've seen technologies coming over the horizon for a long time now. We're all very familiar with social, mobile, big data, analytics. But as a profession, we're still in the middle of facing our largest challenge to date. Somehow we have to hold on to our experience, our heritage and our knowledge, and yet be open-minded enough to be ready to change, absorb and learn from those others, those users, those non-professionals. This isn't new. Everybody has to do it. It's a paradox at the heart of professionalism. We're a young profession. We've only been around. Certainly those of us who dedicate our entire profession to IT, and maybe many here who are from lines of business and others. But for those of us who are IT dedicated, we've only been around as a profession for 30 or 40 years perhaps at the most. But it's familiar, very familiar ground for the older professions, for lawyers and doctors and older professions. The dichotomy, the very way in which you become a professional, the very way in which you increase your value, is to learn how to use your experience to rapidly identify right from wrong, good from bad, easy from difficult, effective from ineffective. That's what professionals are. Whether you're a lawyer, an accountant, it's using an experience to do that. And yet here we are saying, you've got to keep that experience, but be ready to understand that right and wrong might have changed, effective ineffective, might have changed. How do you deal with this dichotomy of being open-minded enough and yet you should experience? That's true professionalism. That's true professionalism. To be the lawyer that understands the social mores of the environment are changing, to be the doctor that understands that diseases mutate and change, to be the IT professional who understands that the way in which our technologies are being used and the technology itself is changing, and to marry our experience of the old with our open-mindedness towards the new. That's what OBUG are setting about to help us all do. To open our minds, to look at the experience that our partners, us as citizens, us as consumers, and us as professionals in our daily lives have, and how we, with Oracle technology, and technology in general as well, can support and aid and still improve that experience. If we can do it, if we can succeed, and some have, the rewards are great. And many have here. Examples I'm showing there are mainly US. But many have here, and in fact, in particular, Benelux has a long, long tradition of true professionalism, open-mindedness, liberalism, an ability to embrace change and yet hold on to the main tenets of professionalism. If we can succeed in doing that as IT professionals, we can make enormous change in our environment. Netflix, turning the world upside down, and the whole concept of delivering value. Entertainment is value. We might think it's meaningless. Of course it's not meaningless. We're human beings. We need to be entertained. There's value to be entertained. I will pay money to watch a movie. Of course I will. Netflix reinvented how that was done. Uber reinvented the whole concept of cars are going from A to B, why not use a network to get them? And just like any significant change, of course, there are many who like it and many who don't. It's not surprising. It's deeply controversial. Proteus is the next step. Is it the next step? Parallel step? But it's another example. Beyond wearables, Proteus is a company that manufactures edibles. Sensors which you can actually eat and can report from inside what's going on. I hope no audio connection. Don't want to know. Okay, so what can we learn from some of these digital leaders? What have the IT organisations, and indeed the lines of business done? It's not just the IT organisation, it can be marketing, it can be finance, it can be sales, it can be in the public sector. Surely by now, it's been around long enough, these technologies, surely by now we can start to learn what are going to be the new pillars of professionalism. Many of us learned in our past, we went to universities, we learned the pillars of our profession. What are the new pillars that are starting to emerge? These may change. We may converge and iterate towards them, but now, this is what we see globally, that the digital leaders think and learn and have professionals study. They need to be able to understand the concepts of digital identity. That should be good for many of us with technology backgrounds. The whole idea of authenticating who you are, what information you're allowed access to, what processes you are allowed to be involved in, even if you're on a plane on Singapore Airways connected by Wi-Fi or you're sitting at your desk. The concepts of digital identity become a part of the fruit of the new profession. Immediate reactions, that's a strange one. The need for the now over the tomorrow. The demand from the consumer and the citizen to have a reaction now, not to wait until something is synchronized in the background, not to wait until somebody is contacted with the right information, to have information at the point. That again is becoming a pillar to understand how we can achieve immediacy of response. Digital Connect, those of you who've been involved with integration, that's not going to go away anytime soon. It's not just integrating process to process or application to application, but machine to machine, person to person, person to device, device to sensor. Much in Digital Connect becomes a new area that we as professionals need to understand and embrace. Business agility is the ever closer convergence. 20 years in Oracle, we've non-stop been talking about business and IT, business and IT. At last, we see them now, that argument is almost going away. IT is so relied upon to provide business agility now, no arguments. And there we are, that word experience. Probably the most important of all of these five. The digital experience. The basis on which we'll choose to spend our time, choose our partners, choose our providers, choose our vendors, choose our restaurants, choose our cruise lines, choose our homes, will increasingly be dictated by the experience which we have, involving both real and virtual. Let me quickly go through some of these. Business agility has been round. We've been hammered for decades about the importance of business agility. IT is holding us back. We had to wait 9 months for that simple change in the process they made, and I wanted to actually make an entirely new product or service available in Eastern Europe. It took too long. How can we possibly be flexible? Can we take advantage of all this cloud stuff to be flexible? We need to consider speed of building, the ability to get people productive really rapidly. In Oracle, it used to take us months from hiring a developer to taking the developer on board, providing an appropriate environment, getting the developer trained up and getting the developer actually productive. We can't afford that time anymore. The developer's probably going to have come, worked for Oracle for a period, then moved off to work for somebody else, then come back again. We need to get people productive within hours rather than months and weeks. We need them to almost plug in umbilically to have the development environment, reusable lumps of code, corporate knowledge. I can start now. Composing music. You should be able to do it with a piano in an empty room. We need to do the same thing when you're composing business processes and software. And then once it's been composed, once the music's been composed, and you don't have to build the piano to do it, it should be there and ready for you. You don't want to then have to buy every instrument yourself, learn how to play every instrument yourself, and then record it all yourself. You should be able to deploy immediately. Of course, cloud technology offers us the chance for that. There's a good chance, and this was always the case, this was the case in Roman times, this was the case in the Middle Ages, there's a good chance that almost anything you're doing, almost any problem you face, unless you're very, very unlucky, there's a good chance somebody saw that problem before. They probably got well towards an answer. You're very unlucky if you truly, truly are the very first. It's a good chance that somebody in Oracle has solved that problem before, if only I can find who it is and what they did. Now, if it's not Oracle, maybe somewhere else. We use forums for that. We use digital forums non-stop. What do we all do the minute you get stuck, the minute you've bought your new hi-fi or your new GPS or whatever it is, the minute you're stuck, Google is your friend. Somebody somewhere's probably done it. This is going to ramp up and up and up. Maybe there's a sensor somewhere that's got the number that you want. Maybe there's a person somewhere that has the information you want. Maybe there's an enterprise application somewhere that's got what you need. And maybe you need it where you are, when you are. Digital Connect, an area for us as professionals to start to understand in a much deeper way. Immediate reactions. Again, in Roman times, again in medieval times, speed has actually always been of the essence. Much of the commerce in history took place in the Netherlands, in the Benelux countries. But of course, back in London, they would trade company shares in the coffee shops in London. They would buy and sell shares in enterprises and companies, many of which were based here. But you needed to know, is that one doing better or is that doing worse? What's happened to the plantation in India? How well has the exploration gone in the South China Seas? Information, immediacy, made a huge difference to your choices and your decision making. Do you know what they did? Ships used to come over from Dover, the only source of information to the coffee shops in London where shares and stocks in all of these enterprises were being exchanged. The only source of information was in the ship coming over from Dover. So of course they started getting faster and faster ships, because the one who has the fastest ship got the information first and sold or bought the shares faster. It was immediate. What they started doing was actually putting flags at the very top of the highest masts. So even as the ship came over the channel from the Netherlands towards the UK, they could see the flags on the top of their mast which were coded, so they knew first the information upon which they could make the judgments. A horse would set off, and the shares or stocks would be bought or sold in London. Immediate reactions have always been key. Now, there's the possibility to be even faster. Can we capture in real time? It's too late. By the time the person's walked out of the store, they're walking around, they've looked at several items in the store. They passed several stands and displays which they didn't seem to look at. And now they've left without buying anything. It's too late. Can we react immediately to the pattern and the way in which they walked around the floor? The items that they looked at. When they came in, could they identify themselves? We know actually they're a long-term customer of ours on the web. Strolling into the store, left totally alone, and then stroll out again. It's too late when they've gone. Can we bring that information to life immediately, give us the insight, and allow us to react? And then perhaps, most importantly, many of you here I can see, like me, will remember a world in where we made our choices on product quality. Being brought up in Britain in the 70s, quality wasn't a word that was much used positively. The problems that my mother and father used to worry about were the fact that the car was rusting 2 years after it was bought. The fact that the teddy bear that you bought for the kids, you could pull its glass eye out and there was a spike on the back. Do you remember the product quality issues? But these are largely gone now. The customers of your organisations are now buying, they're trading, they're working with people because of the experience. It's not because the product quality is almost always okay. It's much more to do with the experience. Amazon offers me prime next day delivery. I can sit on a Saturday evening after a glass of Chardonnay or two and then choose to buy something that I probably shouldn't. I can click the button anytime up to 6 p.m. and it'll be delivered on Sunday before 1 p.m. The experience is driving my business there. All aspects of the experience with the organisation. It needs to be seamless. Whether I'm using the phone or whatever device, it needs to be tailored to me, of course. Much more like to get my business. And it needs to be innovative. That bit more useful than everybody else. That bit easier to use than everybody else. Minimum effort, minimum time for the response that I need. Digital experience is becoming one of, if not the, main criteria for making decisions about partners, vendors, and so on. Now, I've spoken a few seconds ago about amateurs and professionals and how it's always useful to listen to the amateur, but hold on to professional knowledge. So given this is the most important aspect of the IT professional and indeed the business professional life going forward, wouldn't it be good to hear from a true professional in the world of digital experience? And therefore, it's with great pleasure I introduce Jeremy Ashley. Jeremy is the Vice President of nothing less than user experience for Oracle applications. Jeremy, can you join me on the stage, please? So, Jeremy, what is all of this? You're a true professional in this space. What's digital experience all about?
1 minute, actually. Do you have this in black? Andrew. So, you have been talking a lot about the digital experience itself, but over on the user experience side, we really see it as the human experience. We've had this segue into technology over the past 30 or 40 years. We've had this segue over the past 200 years into the Industrial Revolution, where people have had to adapt around machines, move to the cities to use the mills, to use the machines, go to work to use the static computer. But really, we're going beyond that now. The environment is changing and humans adapt to the environment. No longer are we tied to having to go to a particular workplace to use a specialist piece of equipment. No longer do we have to follow a business process that somebody else decided for us that we had to follow. Now, in fact, the environment has changed tremendously. And let's go into some of the details around that and about how it's affecting our customers and how our understanding of that helps us build better products going forward.
So you're going to give us some of the principles there,
Yes.
Jeremy, because you know one of the things that strikes me with phrases like digital experience and anything that's creative like this, there's a real danger that it becomes just a patchwork and a pattern. You know, this device is fantastic, this experience was great, that one wasn't. But what we need are some underlying principles. It's almost impossible to try and design something on the basis of that's good, that's bad, that's good, that's bad. What are the underlying, can we abstract some principles?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point.
I hope so.
So, it's actually not about the technology at all. There are enduring human principles here.
Yep.
The first one is, despite buying stuff and getting clutter and getting wires and things like that, humans are after simplicity. People are after simplicity. You know, I just want to do this. Why does it have to be this? What's the overhead there? So one of our first principles is simplicity. Just enough, we call it the 10-90-90, 10% of the tasks that 90% of users do 90% of the time. Second one is mobility. Mobility isn't just about mobile devices, smartphones. It's the new mobility that we have. Let me just ask you in this room, how many people in this room only use one digital device to do the job? Just their computer, like it was 20 years ago. How many people only use two, computer and the phone? How many people use more? Add a tablet to that, ebook, other things like that. So there you go. Generally, it's no longer about a mobile device. It's about how mobile you are going from device to device on a daily basis. Last one, I'm not going to go too deeply into this, but this is really extensibility. When you have a product, the ability to be able to do simple, direct things to make it very particular to that company or that user.
So Jeremy, nice principles, but for once, I kind of hope that Oracle's not inventing these. Because, you know, we've got a bit of a history here, Oracle likes to be first, we're first out with this, first out with that, etc. But I can't help but feel that if we start inventing our own principles with respect to digital experience or user experience, we're going to be pushing somebody down a certain route. I hope we're learning and listening to others for once.
Okay. Although some companies might try and do it, we cannot invent human experience. There are ways that people work, and they have done, for centuries. You mentioned Roman times, medieval times. The way that somebody buys something is essentially, I want to buy something, I'm going to go to a market, check stuff out, do a bit of haggling maybe, and then get something delivered. And to be honest, I expect there are many ways people could think they could improve that, but the model hasn't really changed because somebody else has thought about it and somebody else has done it. New things come into, because of the technology, for example, like order orchestration, shipping things around the world. There are innovations there, but there are lots of human behaviors that we want to be able to leverage, we want to be able to use. Why teach something new when there's already a pattern there? So it's really about observing that human nature and leveraging.
And are there others who've done that? Are there other companies who've done that?
Well, it depends on the particular company. There are other companies out there, but if you look at certain companies, I'm not going to mention any in particular, but very popular hardware software company, they have the perspective that we do the design for you because you're buying our experience and such. Other companies, they do a certain degree of this, but typically the technology has led the way, mainly with computing technology, because it was so abstract. Over time, it was all about bits in a box and everything like that. The person had to kind of stretch around it. In enterprise applications, the very fact that we have this type of user experience organization across applications is key from this. So also, where do we get our ideas from to be able to do this? The one thing that we do is that we go out there and we follow the money. We look at the other companies to see what they're doing. They're typically working on platforms. They're typically working on what's sort of coming next. So for example, wearables is the trend at the moment. iWatch is coming out. I'll leave my opinions about that to the side, but you've got Android Wear and other such things. Then you've got the innovators. These are usually 18 months to 24 months ahead. I've got the original Pebble. Wearables was the big thing 18 to 24 months ago in regard to funding at many of these crowdfunding sites, startups and other areas. Now we're seeing Internet of Things is a big thing that's being developed, and we're starting to see companies go through it. And also with media, we live in a very different age. We now live in an age where many of the impressions people have about technology are those things that they see on TV, they see in movies and other things like that. And it's identifying what those expectations are, because they're popular for a reason. And they typically have, like the values you said, immediacy of information and other such factors. If you're actually in a movie, you see a user experience there. It's part of a story. That's to tell you what's going on in 2 or 3 seconds. That's just good user experience.
And that's going to influence what your customers, your citizens, your users, and our customers feel and think, what they see in the media. Sounds like a great excuse to me, Jeremy, for you to go out and watch movies on company expenses, if you ask me.
Actually, I do that. I have cable straight into my office.
Not a bad idea. Listen, that's great. So you listen to the marketplace, you're watching other innovators, you're learning from others, quite right, and you're keeping a track really via the media of the zeitgeist at the time. But at the end of the day, we're an IT company, like many people in the audience here, we're an IT company. We have to actually convert this into real life in the form of software, hardware, or whatever. So what's the development platform? Surely you're going to tell us about, Oracle traditionally developed on Sun, of course, many years ago. Everything we did was developed on Sun. So what do we do when we gather all this together and you set down people to do stuff? What's your platform of choice?
Actually, it's interesting because as we are going towards this multiple device environment, we see that it's not really the device that matters, it's really certain trends that we're seeing. So one trend is generally, and this isn't tied to a particular device, one is about being connected. When was the last time in business that you were seriously so disconnected that you couldn't walk 20 yards or go somewhere to be able to connect? I'm not talking about you going on vacation up to the mountains, because if you still want to be connected then, you have other issues beyond just business. But when we use seriously so disconnected, we are using multiple devices, as mentioned, to be able to do that. And just look at the devices, how slim they are now, power supplies, beautiful screens, they've become extremely reliable. They have hopefully more than the 18 hours battery life that some of these things are promising. And then the other one, on the interactions, it's no longer about, wow, I want to get this big screen and see everything that's going on. It's more about, I want to do quick interactions. I don't care how the clock works, I just want to know what time it is so I can keep moving and I can keep going on. Also, it's no longer just keyboards. We're now in the era of true multimodal input, being able to get information very quickly into those devices. And again, to address the platform. How can you just have one platform when you are using multiple platforms during the day? So let's just see something that's really changed significantly. Now in the audience, let's just have some suggestions here. What's the very first thing you do as soon as you wake up in the morning? Generally, I know that some people may have some variations.
I'm over 50, so I'm not saying what I do first thing in the morning.
Okay. So basically, you wake up and you go like this, and you check your mail. Okay? That's the same when I've talked in Asia, South America, North America, you name it. We started doing, when you first started, when did you check your email? You checked it at 9 or 8 a.m. when you went into work and you sat by your desktop, did you?
Yeah.
Okay? Now we start working as soon as we wake up. We work when we're walking between meetings. And we use different devices during the day to do different types of tasks. So how can there be a platform? Well, basically the platform's a cloud now. And it's not about whether it's iOS or Android, it's about getting the right type of experience to the right device at the right time. So for example, going to a meeting, I may just want to get some information on my wearable. I'm standing there doing what I call Starbucks interactions with my phone. with a coffee in the other hand, like so. I'm not going to do I'm not going to like close my books on this device. But then again, later in the day, I'm going to sit down at my desktop or my laptop with a cup of coffee and do some of those more in-depth tasks. It's not about a platform, an actual physical hardware or OS platform. It's now about the cloud and how you reach into that cloud from different
So
devices.
that's a big break from the past. I mean, that, there's always been a platform, as I say, developed initially on Linux or Unix or whatever. But now, really, that's less of a concern. You're looking across a whole range of platforms. But I'm going to press you still on, there must be some of the more traditional approaches here. What about entity relationship modeling? What about functional decomposition? When it comes to actually getting the stuff to work here, you must have some approach to this. You must have some design principles and a way of setting about things. Otherwise, you just kind of have people sitting there coding at random. And I can't believe you've got that.
No, we don't. Actually, I do remember those days of dealing with entities and other things like that. But really, I'll be honest, companies like Oracle, or generally in the industry, we know a lot about these business processes. There's a large traditional investment in these areas around how people behave, how technically business processes are formed. We have that in place, but there's a difference between a business process, we already have that technically done, versus what we call the user mental model, how they actually approach doing their work. So really,
does it mean I have to rip up then? Because there's a lot of IP in the understanding of these business processes. They take a long time to put into place.
I'll be honest, actually, that's a good point, and we did look at that. When something new comes along, the typical idea is to throw out the old and bring in the new. But many of our customers, they've invested decades in our technology. Oracle has as well. Why throw all of that out? Essentially, what we're doing going forward with our cloud software is we are using that technology, that Oracle middleware technology. We're using the same view objects, services in the background, business processes, infrastructure. That stuff is solid. It's tested over time. Excellent infrastructure. But instead of what we call the swimming pool model, when you approach an application, you're either in it or out of it. Even for the smallest task, you have to go into the full application. We've remodeled, we've redesigned the architecture of how people approach this. It's called glance, scan, commit. If you consider the most common interaction a user does with an enterprise system is checking everything's okay and then getting on with something else. That's glancing. Why would you have to go into an application and bring everything up just to do that? If you do glance at something and it's interesting, we call it scanning. You go to the next level to get the next section of information to see whether you need to do more, do a small transaction. And then, and only then, if you need to, do you commit to the full application. And our design goal is to keep everybody in that glance and that scan area. Now the thing is, using this, we have exactly the same footprint. There's no deprecation of feature, technology, or anything, but it greatly enhances how the user approaches their application and their productivity with it. So design is the differentiator here in how we've done that. We're not going to rip up all this technology and all this history because it's taken a long time to be able to get to that understanding. But how we can get, as you say, the instantaneous nature of information, how we can get that to the user is the key element.
So it sounds to me, Jeremy, that certainly within Oracle, and I'm sure there's different approaches to this, but certainly what we'll be looking to do is to try and maintain as much of what we believe to be the value of experience, the business processes and the entities that have already long been established. And I see this as a little bit different from pure consumer world. In the enterprise, it is a different set of pressures. You can't just change everything tomorrow because it suits one individual, much as an individual salesperson might want. Oh, please put another column in that table just for now. Please open another port in your firewall over there just for me, just for a couple of days, is a route to disaster. So there are real constraints within enterprise that mean, to sound a little bit like this for a minute, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few in the enterprise. Whereas in the true consumer world, the individual transcends all. So we have to give the consumer style experience, everything is tailored for me, it's absolutely the way that I want. But we've got to be concerned behind the scenes that there is governance, that there is solid process, that things don't change underneath your feet because somebody else wanted to change, because other people are depending upon you as an enterprise. And it sounds like our approach then is to maintain as much as we can of the IP of processes, etc., but then to rethink the user experience quite differently on top of that.
Well, I use the phrase laws. I know you're an engineer in your background. I use basically, there are basic laws of physics about how people behave. So these are, for example, when we talk about consistency, we're not just talking about the look and feel of something. We're talking about actual interactions, actual methods of interacting with the product that are core. So the first one is an infolet. You'll see that this actually is a core element of you understanding what's going in the system. It's basically, for want of a better word, a report. But it's highly portable. It actually goes all the way from large devices right down to wearables. And it's a way to very quickly glance at the information and then go from there. The other key flow that everybody, the key interaction that almost every enterprise user does is the flow or notifications where the user themselves are part of the business process and they need to make some type of decision to go one way or the other, to approve or not approve. Next one's Omnibox. Omnibox isn't just
What is an Omnibox? I know what an omnibus is, but what's an Omnibox?
Omnibox. Actually, it's a Google term, but it's not just about searching. You can also start typing into their commands, like I start typing in promote. It knows who's reporting to me and other things like that, and it will auto-complete and allow me to go straight to a promote.
There's a micro Google within
yes.
where I am.
And then capture. You've got all these separate applications with all these create edits and other things like that. This is a simple way you can capture something just with 1, 2, 3 steps. And then a lot of the processing in regard to what you have captured is being done on the back end. Just met Andrew for breakfast, it was $25. Click, I can keep on walking. And there's an expense. Just met Andrew from Pinnacle Technologies, and he wants 25 units of X by Friday. Okay, just received a parcel from such and such a company. Just met with Andrew, and he is 40% through his goals. Basically allowing that to be captured, translated, and then later I have the ability to complete that transaction in my own time, sitting down with my computer with a cup of coffee.
So it sounds to me these are the vital elements that you're using. So pretty much these are the things you'll bring together in a combination for any given process or application or problem-solving environment you have. It'll be a combination of infolets, if I'm more likely to be reading, and possibly capturing if we're more likely to be inserting information at that point. But you know, Jared, I'm going to play the skeptic for a moment, if I may, because a lot of this seems to be pushing almost towards artificial intelligence. You know, you see you've got advanced Google searches, you've got clever infolets popping up, etc. You're trying to improve the productivity through us all working better and faster, wasting less time looking for things, wasting less time repeating things that have been done elsewhere. But you know, as humans, we use context all of the time. There's some classic examples of where you can tell a joke that a human can get very easily, but a computer won't. And without understanding the context of environment, which these things don't have eyes, they don't have ears. Without understanding the context, the likelihood of error, you just said Andrew from Pinnacle or Andrew from Oracle, the likelihood of error, the likelihood of repetition having to be made, and which of course can then really spiral in these environments, is very, very high. So I know you're going to tell me, I wouldn't be asking this question if I didn't know you had an answer. Context starts to become truly critical in order to get the productivity going.
That's correct. So we have a couple of elements of context here. Just consider, if you take enterprise applications down to their basic level, it is still about forms and reports. You're getting information into the system and getting information out of it. So remember the old forms there? Every single field that a user has to interact with is a concept they need to be able to understand and be able to fill in. So essentially with context, instead of, let's make the simplest case, instead of you having to put in the date's already captured when you captured the expense. That's the very simplest case. So the more we can fill in or suggest to fill in, the less work that individual has to do, the fewer concepts they have to understand. Remember, in any product, software or not, any concept you introduce to the user, you are responsible for educating them for it. That's not just us, that's also yourselves when you are extending your product as well. You have to be aware that you have to train those users. One set of context is the Internet of Things. We're working with geofencing and Internet of Things. This is the environment being able to describe itself. In this case, geofencing. let's just say compliance in Europe, going between France and going between the United Kingdom. There are certain documents I'm not allowed to take into France from England and vice versa. At the moment, you have to go to compliance training. You have to go through your documents and identify which ones they are. You have to take them off your machine and maybe put them on later. What happens if that document is geolocation aware? So as soon as you go to France, it's not even on your machine. As soon as you leave that hospital, the medical record is no longer available. Again, there's nothing the end user needs to have to do apart from have a role from the company. So again, in that case, no education, no concept, it's just done automatically for them. The other element of context is really just the digital body print that a person has. We already know a lot about the devices. The devices will tell you the date, the time, the temperature actually, in many cases. The devices know a lot about you. The other one, you go out there and you look at the customer experience, you look at social, it tells you a lot about you and your relationships. Now the special thing we have about enterprise is that Apple and Google can collect information about you, but they're not allowed to use a lot of it because of privacy concerns. If you're in an enterprise, every single piece of data that you use while working on the company's equipment belongs to that company. So if a question comes in, like met Andrew from Pinnacle Technologies, he wants 25 units of X by Friday. It knows who Andrew is because of my related meetings from my device, or because of my connection to you, or Andrew actually is in my contact list, opportunities, customers. So it allows us to, it gives us much greater leverage to make sure that whatever is put into the system or is in the system is accurate. And we're working a lot on this contextual technology because we really believe it's the big trend going forward.
So on the scale of things then, Jimmy, where do you think that is in terms of maturity of technology today?
It depends. I can't really go too deep into it, but we have a whole bunch of people out there trying to create artificial intelligences. And they seem to have this thing, it's almost like a Star Trek thing, where you can speak once to it and it will be able to understand. Like, I've been married for 18 years and me and my wife get on extremely well, but we still don't have that level of communication. Where, of course, you're right, correct. I talk to you, you actually come for a clarification, it takes 2 or 3 rounds.
Yeah.
We're doing things around that rather than just trying to deal with pure computational power and interpretation around understanding, building the models and training our system to understand relative context rather than absolute sort of translation of and such.
And context is going to be really key in improving all of our productivity then. Fewer errors, much greater accuracy. Our search results will be much more appropriate if our context is well understood. Yeah. Our messages will be much better interpreted. The results of our analysis will be better directed the more that is understood of context.
Certainly, and then the other element on top of that is the forgiving nature. You speak into Siri now, it gets a word wrong. You have to speak into it all again. But you put something into the system, Andrew, for breakfast, it was $25. It will assume it's you, but it could be a different Andrew. So my ability to very quickly click on Andrew and then look at the other Andrews according to probability, just very, very quickly and directly. It's again, it's like me and my wife or me in any conversation. It's how forgiving the other party is in regard to setting everybody
remotely clever. Isn't it frustrating when somebody's sort of doing you can't see what you're trying to get at?
Just you were talking before about being experts on everything. We all self-correct each other constantly, either positively or negatively. And we're leveraging that very human nature to achieve it.
So we've covered a lot, Jimmy, now. We've looked at some of the principles, we've looked at some of your design concepts. The platform is the cloud in order to deliver across all devices. The concept of using much of the experience already there, but with a new user experience. And then I think to some extent more in the future, round about context. To get a bit more of a grip of this as to how relevant it's going to be to today's projects, can we come and see some of this stuff? Is it available to get a hands-on experience?
Of course. So if you go up to the second floor, go to the end there, it's actually near the coffee place as well, you can see our live version 9 of the cloud experience. You'll see also some of our technologies going forward around wearables, Internet of Things, and also context. And also you'll see a lot about our extensibility of our products as well. So go up there, talk to the folks there, and just get that hands-on. You know, it's only real when you put your hands onto it and try it for yourself.
Fantastic, I'm sure we will. Now, before we close here, Jimmy, I've got one very important question to ask. We opened up about the concept of professionals and the need for a professional to be steeped in experience to know right from wrong and good from bad, and yet the true professional to also be able to take on board new ideas, the real trick. How do you do that? You're moving in a very, very fast-moving world here. It sounds easy today, you know, you need to look at wearables and what have you. But, you know, so quickly they could become out of fashion. It could be the wearables don't turn out to be fantastic, and maybe people won't be walking around with these in years to come. How do you make sure that your team, looking at user experience, doesn't itself become railroaded down an angle and be convinced that its way is the only right way?
That's an interesting question. It's very interesting to, it's very easy to do that. And you probably, in fact, the audience probably know of examples where companies have done that. I think there was a company, it used to be called Nokia. Yeah, that was the one. And what happened to them? That was quick. Almost as quick as Gerrard going on and off on, if anybody follows the Liverpool United match. Anyway, but essentially with this, it's not looking at the technology, it's looking at that core human behavior. There are very particular behaviors that people have, and those, number one, they won't change, but if they do change and adapt, seeing those and changing and adapting, if you get stuck on one technology, your platform's going to become obsolete. That's inevitable. And it's really around looking at the details. People say that details matter when you design something. It's not that details matter, it's really identifying which details matter.
Absolutely.
Whether it's technology or whether it's the human.
As so often, the specifics can change, but the generics remain foundation. We can use our professional experience and just plug in new technologies as we go along. Jeremy, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, OBAT have worked very hard indeed to create an agenda here which is innovative. I hope that we've set the scene well here for you as professionals to start to look at these technologies and how they can be best used to help take us to the next stage. Thank you very much to Jeremy. Thank you to you for your attention this morning. See you later on today. Thank you.